love it. I still love the beginning pedagogy, and I love being able to play, Barber's Adagio and make really great music. So I love all that.
This was a super fun conversation for me to have with somebody who's been podcasting for a long time as well. I'm Jason Heath. This is Contrabass Conversations, and we're talking today with Charles Laux, who is the orchestra director at Alpharetta High School in suburban Atlanta. And he is also the host of the excellent Orchestra Teacher podcast, the podcast that I've been hoping for a long time now. It is a great listen. We've got that linked up in the show notes. He also runs an incredible website and has a YouTube channel dedicated to orchestra teaching. He does a lot of clinics. Really cool person. And I discovered this podcast through our mutual friend and colleague, Brad File, a bassist and orchestra director back in the Chicago area. Quick shout out to our sponsors, Dorico, Ear Trumpet Labs, and Modacity. More on them later. But let's dig into this conversation with Charles Laux. It's so great to meet you. I don't think we've met in person, but we must have been at the same...
We have it Midwest.
And Midwest, okay, it must have been in passing, because I know your name and your face, and I've probably seen your group, because you've played at Midwest.
2018. I had my Alpharetta Symphony Strings there, and then
I was there. I need to go back and look at your program, because I will come back. I was doing a double bass clinic in 2018 at Midwest.
Right.
So
yes.
Wow.
Yeah, and I also did a clinic there too that same year with my group as a demo group. So that was a lot of fun.
What was your clinic? What was the topic of the clinic with the demo group?
It was called It's All About the Bow.
Okay. I don't know if I caught that or not. But wow, what a small world. So, well, hi.
Totally is. Absolutely.
It's so funny how people get connected, because Brad File and I go way back, and I'm on Facebook like one night and I see, hey, I was on this podcast, and I click through and I'm like, wait a minute, this is the podcast I have been wishing for over a decade. So just thank you for doing this. It's like, it's so fun. You have been my dog walking and dishwashing companion for the last week or so.
Oh, great.
So I think I've gotten through almost everything so far.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I have a pretty good network of friends, first off, that I've, started with, and, having taught in, Las Vegas, then I was in Orlando and then back to Ohio, and then now down here in Georgia. It's been great to be able to kind of meet with lots of different people, and I have a long list of people that I want to continue to interview, and time is the problem.
Yes, yes. You can. I've been doing this podcast for I think 15 years at this point, but I took a big chunk of time, like 5-6 years off, and you can tell when I started teaching full time. It's the day I stopped my podcast.
Yeah. That's the challenging part, but the pandemic has been. It's helped me, continue to be motivated to do that and to make time, whether it's just a Saturday morning or Sunday morning or something with the other teachers, they're busy too. So it's been really great. And just to be able to share ideas. And then, as the pandemic rolled through, it was kind of like, well, what are we going to do now? And just getting people different ideas. And I think for a lot of teachers out there, just making them realize that, they're not in this alone. We're all, in the same storm. We're all in different boats, where, some people are on the yacht and some people are in the little rowboat. And some people are barely, keeping their head afloat and drowning, but we're all in the same storm. And it's one of those things that I think it's for a lot of people, it's been comforting, to hear other people talk about it or just get ideas. So that, and it's been, for me, it's been very reflective. And, I talk to somebody and I go, oh, why am I not doing this? Or maybe I shouldn't do this, or maybe I should, so it's been very great for just reflecting on my own teaching too. So, selfishly, I'm getting that byproduct of it, and everybody else is able to benefit as well. So,
well, thank you for doing this. I hope you do it for years and years. And I don't even teach in the way that you cover, these days. But I'm getting so much out of it. And you're the perfect person to do this too, because you know so many people and you're so personable. And it's funny, when I listen to podcasts or I find a new podcast, I usually listen to the most recent couple episodes and then I go all the way back. And it's been really fun. This is a weird analogy, but listening listening to your first episodes, which were like a few months before the pandemic. It's almost like the first few scenes in a disaster movie where like everything's going fine. And you're talking about these conferences, and then you're talking about Aston. I'm thinking, wait for it. And then all of a sudden there's like special report number 1 or something like that.
Right. Yeah. It was that way. We were talking about pedagogy and, repertoire selection and, different things. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, how do I get this microphone to work? Or this is what I'm doing to, with my students virtually. And so, yeah, it took a big course change, but, I think, like I said, I think it's been therapeutic and it's been, really beneficial. And I've just enjoyed getting to catch up with some friends like Brad and I. We were really good friends, and we haven't talked in a while. And it was like, well, hey, I think it just came across. I don't know how we ended up just touching base real quick, and then I'm like, well, why don't you just come on the podcast? And we set it up, and we've done it. So yeah, and I actually just started a podcast with my high school orchestra program, and I don't have any episodes yet, but I'm trying to motivate my students. And so being on a podcast like this, and I told them I got to get home quickly today because I got to be on this podcast. So just to try to motivate them, and I think some of them are getting interested in it and being able to create their own things. But I want it to just to talk about music history or performance practice, or even do comedy sketches, like a top 10 list. It's kind of, those kind of things that are music related that can give them some creativity and some ways to just reach, each other, and then, their parents and the community. And I told them, I said, I had started a podcast back in 2006 before podcasting was cool. With my Winter Park High School Orchestra. And I had run it for a year and a half, maybe. And it was very successful, even though it was kind of a limited audience at that point. And the technical aspects of putting a podcast together back then were a lot harder because you had to use, I think there was a website called FeedBurner, and you still had to hand code stuff. And it wasn't the same as it is now. But I had been doing that a long time, and I had presented at Midwest, I think in 2007 on podcasting. And then I took a break from it like you, but probably a lot longer break. And I just was like, well, now that everybody's listening to it, we might as well do something. And that's how that came to be.
Wow. I had no idea you had this. So you are like an OG podcast person like me. That's fantastic.
Right.
I got the iPod video in 2005. And I remember I downloaded Laux on this little screen, and I watched it. I thought, this is the most amazing thing ever. And I got really into tech podcasts. We have so much share. We could talk. We could do an episode every week and never run out of things to talk about. But and so I started, and I thought one of my first questions was, is there a bass podcast? And there actually was. Somebody had started one like super early, and he did 5 or 6 episodes. It was called the Double Bass Cast, and then he just pod faded. And I've reached out to him many times over the years to say, hey, come on my show. I want to give you a shot. I've never heard back from him. So, but so I think back to those episodes, and I don't go back and listen to those early episodes, as a matter of course. But oh my goodness, it feels like a totally different era. That my audio quality was terrible.
Oh, terrible. And it was so much more difficult just to, like I said, just to get it out there and, creating your own feed. And then people need this special software to get it. And then finally iTunes came out. But it was way different.
Well, and you still had that barrier until we got these devices like this. I remember doing a chamber music festival up in Door County, Wisconsin, and I would drive my car outside of the public library and get on the Wi-Fi and download all the podcasts I wanted onto my laptop, and then sync my iPod video. Probably,
you gotta. Yeah, those were the old days, right? And I have all these CDs, and I've ripped a whole bunch of them, and now it's like, do I really need to keep all this? Because I can just go on, I am an Apple Music subscriber, so I just go on Apple Music and I can get what I want and make a playlist, and basically I have every single song that's been put out at my fingertips, and that's pretty remarkable.
Well, it's so interesting because I think we are roughly the same vintage age-wise. And so I came up, I worked at the Northwestern Music Library. That was my work-study job. And I remember, someone would come up with a paper slip, and it had an album or possibly CD or even reel-to-reel call number, and I'd go in the back and I'd pull it out, put it on the turntable. They'd sit down, if I wanted to get any bit of music, just the labor involved, right? And even when we were both starting podcasts, there was more labor involved. It's just just incredible. And when you started your first podcast, and not around the same time I started mine, YouTube was just kind of coming onto the scene. That wasn't even a thing yet.
It wasn't a big deal, and but I just remember recording some video podcasts too, and there were little things that my students would do, like commercials. So I'm going to be presenting a podcasting session at the ASTA conference virtually. I've already recorded it and put it through, but because I had originally planned with my Alpharetta orchestra to have a podcast going, and with everything going on and just motivation and whatnot, this school year started virtual and it was just a mess. So I didn't really start it until January, and I had to record this session. So I actually used old clips, but I was like, well, these are ideas and they're still relevant today. It's like 15 years old, but oh well.
Wow. I am so proud to have my course with Discover Double Bass Beginner's Classical Bass out in the world. This was a long time coming, friends, and this course is designed, as the name implies, for beginner bassists who want to learn how to play classical music, or for more experienced players who wish to revisit the foundations of technique. The course is comprised of 66 lessons over 4 hours and covers a wide range of topics on classical bass, which will make a real difference to you playing. It is the perfect course for beginners. I feel weird saying that since it's my course, but I definitely believe in it, to build a solid foundation of double bass technique and to help you feel confident playing. Many of the lessons include transcriptions of the pieces, exercises, and etudes, so you have everything you need to practice at home. I spent hundreds of hours putting this together over the last few years. I'm so glad to see it out in the world. We have a link to it in the show notes, or just visit discoverdoublebase.com/Jason Heath. This episode is brought to you by Ear Trumpet Labs. They make hand-built mics out of Portland, Oregon, and they have an excellent mic for upright bass called Nadine. The Nadine is a condenser mic with a clear, natural sound and incredible feedback rejection. This mic is a completely new design. The head mounts in between the strings above the tailpiece with a rubber grommet, and the body securely straps to the tailpiece with Velcro elastic. A 14-inch Mogami cable connects the two parts, making it easy to place on any bass. It's durable and holds up to the demanding needs of the instrument while offering excellent sound quality. Ear Trumpet Labs is offering a free t-shirt just for Contrabass Conversations listeners with the purchase of a mic. Just visit www.eartrumpetlabs.com/contrabass to claim yours and check out the Nadine. Have you been bombarded with requests for, like, how do I do this, how do that? Because you're so far ahead of the game technologically from what I imagine your typical teacher is. Like, for me, at the beginning of the pandemic, it was like, dozens and dozens at least of emails from people. Hey, Jason, what about this mic, or what about this camera? Have you been answering the world's tech questions?
I've always been Mr. Gadget. So whether it's an audio recorder or microphones or interfaces and video cameras, I've always been kind of a Mr. Gadget. So yeah, I have a lot of friends that just rely on me. And then about a year and a half ago, I got on our district's technology team. It's called the Vanguard team. Great bunch of people, and so our job is to help others with whatever technology, and we're a Microsoft district. I'm on Microsoft Teams, which has not been my favorite, but I've instead of fighting it like I was at the beginning of the school year, I've come to embrace it now because I have to.
Yeah.
So I'm a Google person, an Apple person, and it wasn't working so well, but it's okay now, and I've got it down. It's just, the clunkiness of Microsoft. But so yeah, I'm a Microsoft certified innovative educator now, and so I had to do that training as part of it. So it's been good to kind of broaden my horizons a little bit and continue learning. Sometimes we do get stuck in our ways. Mm-hmm. So this was a way to just take something that you really didn't like and have to take the bull by the horns and learn it. And that's what I did.
I have to use Teams for Eastman, where their Microsoft outfit. I think back to my school, but I'm talking to you on MacBook Pro. I'm an Apple person through and through. I remember back my last high school teaching job, which is Vernon Hills, Illinois. I had, of course, your worst PC tower imaginable, and I would just rebelliously bring my MacBook Pro, plop it in front of my computer, boot up the computer, take 15 minutes, it seems, to get going. And
right. Yeah, I think technology-wise, we have a lot in common.
Yeah. Well, it's been funny as I had been moving into a phase of only doing in-person interviews, and I think long-term I'm probably still in that camp. I was really having a good time bringing my Zoom H6 and throwing a few SM58s in my bag and going to conferences. And I know you did at least a bit of that at Midwest 2019, right? Did I hear something live from there?
You know what? I did. One of my former students, David Metrio, who teaches in Gwinnett County, just down the road from me. I was like, well, we're right next to each other in the plane. We're good friends. And now that, he's not my student anymore, but he's an amazing educator, and he's always been an amazing student when he was a student too. So I was like, well, why don't we just, before things get crazy, we got there early. I think on Wednesday or whatever. And I said, why don't we just in the hotel room, just record a podcast? We recorded one live in Chicago, and that was super fun. And I just used a really simple setup of, I have a Tascam DR100 or whatever it is. And had a couple external mics on there similar to you. And, not a lot of editing. It was just bam. So it was good.
I love doing those things live. I firmly believe that I will go back to do it. Now it's been very convenient. The Zoom thing, all of a sudden, we go back a year ago and it would be, it's like, oh, you want to do Skype? Oh, I think I had a Skype account back in the day. Let me look. Or we do FaceTime and think I'd be having issues. This has just sort of become the de facto thing on planet Earth, I guess, for connecting.
No question. Yeah. To be able to predict the future and buy Zoom stock would have been nice, right?
Yeah, although it's interesting. I was listening to a podcast, and I'd love your thoughts on this. You should have bought Zoom stock back in early 2020, the begining.
Right.
But some financial podcast I was listening to said actually it would be very unwise to invest in Zoom at this point because I wonder what kind of pendulum swing there's going to be when we can start doing things in person. I know I'm not going to be doing a lot of voluntary Zoom calls.
No, I'm very virtualed out, and we had our local, our state conference last weekend, and I couldn't do it right now. I just needed a break. So I'm doing 4 sessions next Friday for Wisconsin music educators online. So those are all like live virtual, and one for our local Fulton County Schools virtual conference. So professional development. So I'm just really zoomed out. So, whether it's presenting or attending, I mean, I like to attend things and I like to see people and talk to people, but it's just not the same, So
right. For sure.
I'm really hungry for a regular conference. So I'm hoping by Midwest of this year, we'll get there.
I hope so. Yeah, I have not left the city of San Francisco since the pandemic broke out, which is crazy. And I was on the road. I mean, boy, the 5 months before that, I was in the UK. I was in Australia. I was coming back from Pittsburgh, and we were, hugging and all that sort of stuff. And then my base hasn't left my place in approaching a year. It's crazy.
Yeah. It is. It's amazing. And when I was able to get back into my classroom this fall, it was just a kind of an odd feeling, but it was a great feeling. And then we were virtual for at least 3 weeks. And then when the first kid walked into my classroom, since March, it was it really brought tears to my eyes because it was just that feeling. It was just a really great feeling, But in my school situation right now, I have very few students. I think about 21 of my 130 are face-to-face, and the rest of them are at home. So, very cautious parents, which I totally understand and appreciate. But and so that it makes me feel very safe at school. And I know there are a lot of other teachers in the situation where they have 35 kids or 40 kids in their classroom in a smaller classroom than mine, and that's really hard to deal with.
Well, and you're on year 25 of teaching, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
And so I back in my last high school job, I always had these big groups, particularly the young groups. I think I never had a group smaller than 50 at my last job. Okay. So it'd be like, hello back there, and it's got to be so weird. I think on one of your recent podcasts, you were talking about how one of your groups has 9 kids you're seeing in person.
My largest group has 9.
Your largest group. Okay. So how
I have a class with 1.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I give them, I joke around, like we're gonna hang today again, my best friend, and things like that. But yeah, I have a class with 1,
Wow.
and one with 3 and 6, 9, and 5, I think. So yeah, it's small.
Are you? What are you doing with these students? That's a question that all teachers are asking right now.
Right. I want them to have as much possible as the ensemble feel as I can give them, because that's why they're in the class. So we do play with some click tracks and accompaniments, and some, I will make those, or take a recording and add the click to it. And then I have an app called AnyTune Pro on my iPad that will allow me to slow it down. And it's great because it keeps the sound quality relatively good. Even when you slow it down 70, 60%, it keeps it pretty good. So that's been nice that we at least have that. So and I display my my score on my iPad, mirror that to the screen, play the audio on a separate iPad, because I have 2 iPads and I have a computer, 2 monitors, and so I have this little cockpit of things. I got my Harmony Director keyboard on one side. I got a mixer that goes in there, so it's a big setup. But so we're playing with audio accompaniment tracks, and I think obviously it's difficult when you're on a virtual setting to play anything with a lot of nuance and a lot of rubato. we're playing some straightforward, as much straightforward as we can, and the level is lower, than we played before, just because we have to. I think about it. Well, my 9th graders, well, they missed half of their 8th grade year, and there's a lot of teaching moments in there, and a lot they probably didn't get in as far as playing goes. So I've really had to I've struggled with that a little bit, but at the same time, I've come to realization, like, it's going to take us a few years to get, several years to get caught up and be back at the level that we were at. So we're doing that. And again, the level's a little bit lower, trying to pick tunes that are straightforward. So that's part of it. And then I've introduced some theory. So we've been doing some, first semester, we did a lot of interval identification on paper or on the screen, I guess, but written. And then this semester we're focusing on some interval, like ear training. So we're just doing like a couple intervals per week. So like the first week of our semester was perfect unison, minor second, major second, boom, that's all. The next week was a minor, major thirds. And we're up to, I think we're minor, major sixth this week, and we're going to finish next week, and then we're going to start mixing them up. So I'm trying to give them tunes to play. We play them. They won't sing, but we play them a lot, and I play them for them, and we use musictheory.net to listen, and then they have to do a formative assessment where they're having to do so many exercises, get a certain percentage correct, and then take a screenshot, and that's what they submit with their name on it. They have to write their name on it. So they're not all submitting the same screenshot. So we're doing that. And then we've done some listening things where just some comparative listening. I had students, pick a style of music or a composer that they've never heard of and find a piece, and I gave them prompts to write about, and we put that into a collaborative place where they could all kind of share and see each other. So just some things like that too, without making it, a music appreciation course, which they didn't sign up for, but trying to keep it relevant. And I'm telling them, this theory, your training is going to help your sight reading. It's going to, all this is going to help. We've done some rhythm drills and obviously your scales, and our district bought us smart music. So that's free. And so we've been assigning some smart music exercises and some of our technical things. And I think smart music's great for scales and arpeggios, because it's going to, make them play with the click, make them play with the steady tempo, and it's going to tell them if they're right or wrong. And you can adjust the level of how it scrutinizes against intonation. So I started out kind of low, and I'm like, well, that F natural really doesn't sound so good. So I got to boost that up a little bit, make it a little bit harder. But a few of my kids, were getting really frustrated with it, because they would play their scale and they're like, Dr. Laux, I played all the right notes. I'm like, yeah, but the click is here and you're like way behind it. So it's thinking that every note you played is wrong. I said, this is part of the standard. This is the new standard. So I do feel that playing with the click track, playing with the accompaniment, is teaching the kids a whole new set of skills. When we play together, there's a lot of spontaneity where we can, we slow down, we speed up. The conductor slows down, we speed up. People listen, they make adjustments. But when you're playing with a click, you have to be on, and so we've done some virtual orchestra things too. And I put out the click track, and we practice with it, and we talk about it if you're not all together, I can't put the audio together. I can only do so much fudging,
Right.
And to the point where we don't want it to be 100% fake, but at the same time, in a situation like that, you have students with using like the built-in microphone in their really terrible Dell laptop, to students who will have a USB mic, to everything in between.
Mm-hmm.
And so the quality is always just, it's everywhere. So
this episode is brought to you by Dorico, the advanced music notation software from Steinberg. And one of the things that is a very intentional decision, but also a little perplexing if you're coming from other pieces of software, is that when you start, there's no time signature. It's just a single quarter rest. That opens the door for so much creativity. And here is Daniel Spreadbury, Senior Product Manager of Dorico, on why they made that design decision.
We really wanted to make it clear that when you start a piece of music in Dorico, it's really like starting from a blank piece of paper, no matter how true that really is in Sibelius and Finale, because of course you can change all those things, sometimes at a cost. If you've written some music in Finale and then you change the time signature, you can have a lot of ties and all sorts of other stuff to clean up, which you won't have in Dorico. But it's just that kind of hopefully inviting. I mean, some people might say, oh, it's a bit daunting. There's literally nothing there but 1 quarter rest. I've got to decide everything. But yes, you do. You're the creative person. You do have to decide everything.
This is one of the many design decisions that I think is totally brilliant in Dorico. It has opened the door for my own personal creativity, and it's such a beautiful product. I can't say enough good things about it. I use it every single day. There is a free version, Dorico SE, that gives you practically all the options that the full version of Dorico gives you, up to 2 stabs. So if you're doing bass duets or any kind of duets like that or exercises, that's more than enough. Dorico.com will take you to their page on Steinberg's website. And thank you so much for sponsoring the podcast. There is this mode in my practicing app, Modacity, which I totally love. It's called Deliberate Practice, and it's such a cool feature. Here's Modacity founder and CEO Mark Gelfo on how this works.
One of my pain points as a musician was like not really having a method to generate reliable improvement. And deliberate practice is like the scientific method for music practice. So what you do is you identify the one thing that you want to improve, be it articulation, intonation, emotion, comfort, whatever it is you want to improve, and brainstorm or choose one of the pre-suggested strategies for that area of improvement, and then test it out. Record yourself trying that strategy, listen back, and press yes, it worked, or no, it didn't work, to create that improvement.
It's such a clean way of tracking your progress. I do it every day, and it has done wonders for my bass playing and just my overall enthusiasm for music. You got to check it out. Modacity.co is the site, and if you go to our site, you can click through it and get a special offer for lifetime access for this app. Thank you so much for sponsoring the podcast, Modacity. Well, talking to my bass colleagues, you've never heard a sound as terrible as a double bass through an iPhone microphone. Yeah. It's just you can't understand. I have 2. I do very little teaching these days, but I have 2 private students. They're kids here in the San Francisco public schools, and it's been one of them. She has just an iPad, and so I can barely hear what she's doing, but she's got some chops. The other student, he has a USB microphone, and so that works. But it's been really interesting getting the student perspective for me as an outside observer. How's it going? And they're both like, not very well, just in terms of schools, and people trying to figure it out. And, everywhere is so different, but varying by state and region. And so it's tough. Several of the middle school orchestra directors just resigned, the last year. They say, yeah, I was about to retire. I think I'm out. So
yeah, I mean, if I was on the edge, I would probably, but my boys are young. I have an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old, and I got to get them through college. So I got a long ways to go. It's going to be a 39-year career here before I can retire from public school jobs, and then then I can do something else. But yeah, so and I love it so much. I'm not ready for that yet, but it has been, I would probably say, the hardest school year ever. Last spring was really difficult too, just because it was my 4th year at the high school, and the seniors were my babies that I came in with. We came in together as freshmen, and when they didn't get their awards banquet, they didn't get their spring concert, they didn't get their prom, they didn't get all these things at awards night. I mean, it was really heartbreaking. So
yeah, I can't even imagine what it's like to be in that system right now, as a teacher or as a student, or it's crazy. I got a technology question. Well, I've got way too many things for us to talk about, but let's pretend we're not in a pandemic. How much tech is going on in your typical orchestra classroom? If we go back like a year and a half, are you using an iPad and putting things up on the screen? How digital are you in your rehearsals? I'm just curious.
Pretty digital. I wish my students could have digital sheet music and everybody have like a 12-inch iPad and whatever. But so besides that that's all paper. But for me, all my scores are on FourScore on my iPad. I have a Bluetooth foot pedal. I can change my pages as needed. I have very similar to what I have right now. I have my harmony director on my left-hand side. So for tuning chords, for playing melodies for them, and I have my violin right there, ready to go. I have a mixer with the Dr. Beat plugged into it, a separate aux input from my small iPad, my small iPad Pro, which I do playback recordings or whatever on. My computer's out there all the time, and then all my iPad music, my scores are always mirrored to the Apple TV on the giant screen behind me. So the ability for the students to see the score is something that a lot of them are just at the very beginning. They're like, well, I don't understand this. I'm like, well, here's you, here's them, here's what you're doing, here's what they're doing. See why you shouldn't play so loud, or see why you need to play louder, or for balance, for understanding the role, whether it's harmonic or rhythmic or melodic. It's been super beneficial, and I've been doing that for basically since for a long time, as long as I can go back, at this high school at least. Because before the high school, I was at the college, so I wasn't able to do that really. I didn't really need to do that as much. But I've always been, like I said, pretty heavy tech in my program.
When did you make the leap to conduct? Okay, so I've only conducted from an iPad once because I do no, that's not true. I've done a bunch of school clinics where I use the iPad, or sometimes I just get this teacher's score, so it's paper. Sure. But I conducted a San Francisco All-City Middle School 2 years ago, I think, and it was my first time actually. We're going to do it from the iPad, and I had, I think, some sort of recording program running, so I could record rehearsals and listen to them on the way back home. And one thing so you have one page instead of two in front of you, at least in portrait mode. But there's something that it was really cool to be able to look down and have the page always be in the same spot on the stand. If you typically have a score, right?
Yeah, you don't have to track.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
And I was getting I only got a few rehearsals and a concert of practice on it. So when did you decide to go? Do you pretty much exclusively conduct off the iPad these days?
Yeah, everything is now. Wow. And that's been I'm in my 5th year of doing that. Since I got to that high school, my orchestra boosters, I came in, I said, I'd really like a 12.9 inch, iPad Pro. So they bought one for me, and just Scanner Pro, and all the scores. And the greatest thing is I can zoom in, reverse pinch, zoom into a spot. We're writing in fingerings. My students write the fingerings in, or I ask them to, put fingerings in, because one of my big things is I don't mark up my students' music before I give it to them. We do that spontaneously as we go through, because it's part of the learning process for me. Now, middle school is a different story. Let's write it in, because they just don't have time. And even my younger groups, I have 5 levels in my school. So everything from students who have really bad hand position, or just technical issues, whatever kind of technical issues or reading issues, to I had student my top violist got into Yale, and she's going to be doing music, and right now she's doing music and some business type things, like a double type major at Yale. I mean, so I have everything in between. I had a student audition for Juilliard year and a half ago. So yeah, it's a great diversity and ability levels. And I love it because I still love the beginning pedagogy, and I love being able to play, Barber's Adagio and make really great music. So I love all that about my school.
Yeah, it's so interesting having all that mix of levels like that. I one of my teaching jobs was actually at Ferris Bueller's High School, Glenbrook North.
Nice.
Yeah, I know. So where the car pulls up and Matthew Broderick goes out, that's the hall. And so
that's amazing.
Yeah, and so I had the experience of my top group, and they played Midwest before I was at the school, maybe 2001, 2002, something like that.
Okay.
And I had that, and then I was also the electronic music teacher, which was DJing class. We had Ableton Live setups and control surfaces,
nice.
And it was so interesting to go from playing like Tchaikovsky, like really good, right into that electronic music class. And not that was a worse musical experience at all; it was just a totally different one, and it was really cool.
Right.
That class pulled in people that weren't in band, orchestra, or choir. That program grew.
Yes.
I actually caused problems for that school because the class had 10 people when I started, and had 100 people, and they'd added sections when I left. But it was such a weird class. Like no one's qualified to teach that class, so I think I messed up the sectioning for them with that class.
Yeah, that's I had taught class guitar for a while, and it's the same thing. You get the kids who either never signed up for band, choir, orchestra, or dropped out of, but loved music, and it just like they were at home with that. And you get a different demographic of kid. The orchestra kids are orchestra kids, and band kids are band kids, and choir kids are choir kids. But these were kids that really didn't fit any of those molds, maybe. And it was just great to have that. We have a music technology program at our school that our former band director has kind of he didn't want to retire, so he's taken that role on, and we have a beautiful lab with iMacs and interfaces and great keyboards and Pro Tools and the whole thing, and he does an awesome job. So that has grown significantly since he started it too. So it's nice to have those I guess you could call them alternative music programs, something different from the norm. And so we offer guitar, keyboard, the technology, band, choir, orchestra, and then we have an IB program at our school too, the International Baccalaureate. So we have that music course that's infused with band, choir, orchestra. It's not like a lot of other schools. It's a separate course, and they can't be in band, choir, orchestra and take IB music. But we've infused it, and it's been awesome.
Wow. You are in such a musically rich region of the country. The programs as suburban Atlanta, it's interesting because when I talk to people that aren't in the world that we're talking about right now, people are probably so sick of me talking about education on this podcast, but the audience is large enough that there are a lot of people that this is what they do. So I just say, go listen to it. We have lots of bass players out here, so we can geek out as much as granularly as we want.
I love the bass. Yeah. I actually got to study some when I was doing my undergraduate and during my graduate work. I made a point to study privately, and it was invaluable, and and then when Brad and those guys out in Las Vegas would host their bass workshops on a Saturday. This is before kids, BK. I would, be able to go to an all-day bass workshop and just soak it all in. And I learned a ton from Brad and, Jeff Newman and, all those guys.
Yep. These are all familiar names to both of us. I was the guest artist for the 2017 workshop, and it was so cool to go, to go around and see what's going on there. And it's just so interesting. Someone who's not in the music ed world where we're talking about, they might be surprised where the zones of, where these, hotspots might be the wrong word, but where these places in the country are. Like I say, Las Vegas has outstanding orchestra programs. People say, Vegas, really? You could, and then it's like Atlanta, amazing. There's a lot going on in suburban Chicago. There are these certain areas, lots of areas like Ohio. I mean, you've had jobs in a lot of these.
Outside of Columbus, I was in Hilliard. There's great programs there, Dublin, and all around that whole area. With Ohio State being there too, there a lot of great teachers coming out of that university and just making that place home. But there's definitely the hot spots. Orlando has some great programs too. I taught there, and so it's been great just being able to have a circle of friends in different places and be able to keep in touch with them. And then you realize like, wow. There's a lot of people that I know and so many people that I've like personally, benefited from just learning from and knowing over the years. Just It's great.
Yeah, and I guess the whole state of Texas. I can't ignore that. I went to visit Dallas Strings a few years ago, and I'm forgetting what town that is. It's north of Dallas Fort Worth, but they took me to the high school, which is the performing arts center is larger than Northwestern University's centers at a high school. It's incredible. It's just incredible to me how. Where these areas are in the country and where you might not find that. Moving to California 5-6 years ago, I thought, the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, there are going to be lots of programs. Well, there are a few, but it's nothing like what we're talking about here. It's just for a long list of reasons. That's just not the case here in a place where you might expect it to be.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for what we have here in the Atlanta area, and just the support of the district and the facilities and the parents. They get it. I mean, I've been at schools before where the parents just don't get it, and that makes a huge difference because they're not going to support it. They're going to kind of poo-poo it, and it's like, no, it's just kind of for fun. So our parents really believe that the arts are vital, and it's fantastic to have that support all the time.
Well, one of my cooperating teachers that I ended up teaching alongside with him at Libertyville High School, Jeremy Marino's his name. He and I would go around and see tons of concerts at Midwest, and he gave me such great advice. It's like there are so many great benefits to seeing performances at conferences, of course, but like one of the really interesting things, if it's presented in the program the right way, is like learning about these communities. What size town are you in? What's the program setup? Are you junior high or middle school program? When do you start your strings? What's the school population size? And it's just so, how's your day structured? You learn so much, and there's just so many different ways to do this, I guess.
Right. I mean, when I was in Ohio, the big deal, you started in elementary school. Well, here in Atlanta area, the elementary programs have been gone for a while now, and everything starts in sixth grade, in middle school. And a lot of it has to do with funding and, the number of elementary schools that are out there. There's a ton. So it just was really difficult to fund. And being that when I was in Ohio, I was at two elementaries, sixth grade center, the middle school, and the high school. I was at a lot of schools every week, usually 2 to 3 a day. That's hard on the teachers, and it's hard every time there's a building change. That's when you lose students. So when I was in Ohio, we had the elementary that went through fifth grade. The sixth grade was a separate building, and then the 7-8 was the middle school. So now, like, you're changing buildings so much, the student dropout was a lot. But as soon as the year that I left, they cut the fifth grade strings program, and everybody was really up in arms about it and sad. But then they changed the sixth grade schedule to be, I think they met 3 times a week before that. They changed the sixth grade schedule to meet every day. And since I have left, the program has tripled in size. I mean, it's remarkable.
It's such
what can happen.
Oh, it's such a complex, you could mind map out so many different and so many factors. How is the feeder program structured? Is it a class or is it before school thing? How often do they meet? Block scheduling, not block scheduling. I mean, it's so. Oh no, we got a teacher that half the kids hate. Okay, now the next decade's going to be different. It's just it's so astonishingly complex. But it's an exciting profession. And the other thing that I love is you got places like suburban Atlanta, you've got Texas, you've got these places that are just filled with great programs, your state conventions, you all learn from each other. But then I also love some of these outliers. Like, I'm from South Dakota originally, and Rapid City, South Dakota, their orchestra has played at Midwest. I think their chamber orchestra did a while back. They played at ASTA. They sound fantastic. Their nearest string program besides them is 300 miles away. And it's a one family operation. Like the dad is the high school orchestra conductor. His dad was the conductor of the Black Hills Symphony. His wife teaches in the schools. Their daughter teaches violin and viola lessons. They literally are the string, and they're sounding as good as just about anybody. So it's one of those professions that if you get that cult figure sort of characteristics right, in a good way, and get people to buy in and get the parents to buy in, it's incredible what just one person can do, even if you're not in.
It really is, and it's also also, the thing that's difficult about a situation like that is that, the wrong person comes in, and it takes, years and years to build a program, and it takes like one to wreck a program, with the wrong fit, whether it's the wrong fit or whatever it might be. So yeah, that's amazing. I agree. There are little pockets here and there. It's like, wow, where did this come from? My friend Matt Radspinner is an example. He's in the kind of, not, I wouldn't say in the middle of nowhere, but he's almost in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania, and he's got a very strong program, and there's not much around him, to be able to support that. So, but he makes it work, and he does an awesome job.
Well, that's where I think your podcast, I love your podcast. That's where I think the power of what you're doing by putting that out there, it's hard to really understand what a difference that can make to people that maybe aren't, and I mean, we have more and more access to resources with every coming year, but still a podcast and that long form, conversational nature of the medium is just, it's so great. It's I've learned a ton just listening to your episodes. I sort of realized the power of that a few years ago when somebody wrote in who had served in the military and is also a bass player, and he said, I started to listen to your podcast in the jungles of Indonesia, and he's describing and then he said, I'm now in rural Kazakhstan, which is amazing. I'm not sure how much of Kazakhstan is not rural, but he's describing where he is, and I'm thinking, wow, I'm sitting in Chicago at the time, recording these things, and they're going out in the world like that, and somebody on a Jeep halfway across the world is listening to this. So it's just,
that's right.
It's a powerful medium.
It is amazing. You can reach. I mean, even in 2006, I remember looking at some of the analytics, and I had people in Germany and Finland listening to this high school orchestra podcast. Like, how, why? But it's remarkable. And I told, this is part of the thing I told my students, for getting this thing off the ground now, is like, you could reach so many more people than you think. It's not going to just be for your friends in, third period. It's going to be for the world, to listen to. And if they want, they can. Well,
and you're reaching your audience in a way that you never could. Like, we could not have an AM radio station about what we're talking about in any market.
Yeah.
No one would sell ads on it. Not enough people. But you spread it out far and wide. I mean, there are so many people. Mm-hmm. It's really cool.
Yeah, it really is. Wow. It really is amazing.
Wow. Well, I can't wait to spend more time with you in person whenever the next conference opportunity comes up, or
would be great.
Or whatever. Yeah, for sure.
Would be great. Or even something through Eastman or whatever. So
absolutely. I was actually just chatting with them, and we're getting some more. We're getting some more clinics going. So you're on the we did some stuff at the beginning of the pandemic, and then. I was just talking with one of the regional sales managers out in the Eastern Seaboard, and so we've more details coming soon.
Yeah, there's a lot. All the gigs I had, got canceled, or can you come next year? And then I was supposed to come this year, and they're like, "Could you come next year?" Like, it's happening. Like, okay, we're gonna go 2 more years. That's fine.
Well, I hope you continue to bring your mics and get some of these person at the conference kind of conversations. I think that those are so great. I mean, in a way, I don't know, I'd love your thoughts on this, but in a way, it's great to connect like this because there's nothing else going on at a conference. There are so many things happening. But time like at the conferences goes so fast. You're like, well, I only have an hour to see everybody at the exhibit because I got to go to this, concert and this session. And so, time is difficult. Yeah, it is. And sometimes I've found that the quality of the conversations might not be as deep just because it's like, hey, I got to see this thing. But still, if it's everybody's there and it's a really, it's a fun. And also there's something I've always found kind of fun about those kind of bustling, exhibit floor kind of conversations.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's just that being in the moment, and getting wrapped up in it is kind of exciting for the listener too. Mm-hmm.
Well, the beautiful thing also about this, and I know you're a busy guy. I don't want to talk you to death here, but for me personally, I would want to be having these conversations anyway, even if there wasn't a podcast. But we're also busy. Like, who's going to carve out an hour to talk about these things? But it's been so great for me at all points of my life to just put all the devices away and just sit down and talk about interesting topics with people. So I could just lie and say I had a podcast and do this, and I would get the benefit out of it because it's fun to do.
It definitely is. I've enjoyed it, and like I said, I have a long list of people that I'm going to be asking to come on, and then again, it's just finding the time to do it. Especially, during the spring gets kind of busy, but we'll see. I don't know if I'll have the spring concert and things to have to put that time into, so we can put that time spent on a podcast or anything else. I've been doing a lot of YouTube videos as well. So that's been, again, for my students, but then it's reaching a larger audience, which it's been nice. And I've got a lot of good feedback from teachers like, oh my gosh, this saved my life, or I'm using this for warm-ups every day. I'm like, cool. Great. I'm glad it's helping you.
Yeah, your YouTube channel is awesome. I will absolutely link up to that. It's really great. Where do you find the time to do?
Well, it's been harder lately, but at the beginning, it was just kind of we were all on virtual, and I just I was able to find the time. We were supposed to only do 15 to 30 minutes of synchronous class per period. So I'd have time, I'd have 15 minutes at the end of the period. I'm like, well, let me throw the camera on and see if I can teach this real fast, and then, find time to edit it. So it's slowed down a little bit. And now my boys are in baseball. We start practice tomorrow or on Saturday. So my life is pretty much over until the mid-May, because I have two boys and I'm coaching both of their teams. So, it's a lot of time, but it's time well spent, because it's something I love and something they love, and we do together. And
wow,
I'll never get that time back with them for sure. So
wow. Well, I caught you just before the even
right.
busier season happened. So I'm glad.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I enjoy it, like I said, and it's just about balance. And this is something for everybody. Is obviously your family's got to come first, and everything else you just got to make sure you're balancing. And it's not always the easiest task. And sometimes, like now with baseball, that's going to be. I'm going to be spending more time doing that than I am making videos or doing podcasts. So it'll slow down, but it's fine.
That's okay. Seasons for everything.
That's right. That's right.
Well, I appreciate it. It's so great to hang out and spend some time with you. I'll link up to everything. You've got plenty of things to link up to.
I appreciate the invite, and I had told my double bass players in my orchestras that I was going to be on a double bass podcast, and they're like, "Why are you going to be on?"
Yeah,
I think we're going to talk about some other things.
Yeah, it's such a weird. I mean, I've done everything wrong the whole way. I've done everything, but oh well. It's funny because that's bass is in the title. You have to just talk about whatever. I have more bassists than non-bassists, but we go all over the place. It's a whatever podcast.
I just thought it was really cool when I was scoping out some of the episodes, and I saw David White's name in there. And he's like, I had him just for the 1 year, but I think it was senior year. But man, he was a great student, and there was a scheduling conflict that year because I had taught 7 through 12 in that district, and the scheduling conflict, they overlapped my 8th grade orchestra with the next period, which was a chamber orchestra, which David was in, and so I would have to come into the class late every day. Don't get me started on that administrative decision, but David would they'd be tuned and playing scales and arpeggios when I walked in, and every day it was just David, was a big lifesaver in that area, and it's just neat to see him be so successful and such an amazing person still, and a great player, and getting that recognition that he deserves. So, it's just cool to see that.
I know, it's such a small world, and that's part of the fun thing of doing a podcast is making connections like that. My wife and I saw David. He was playing Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and they were in San Francisco for a bit. So he got us some tickets, and then we hung out for a bit after the show, and he's been a great person to me, and just what a small world, right? That you would have been his teacher like that.
It totally is. It totally is. I've had some great students over the years, and it's just so neat to see them, whether they're going to music or not, just be, grow up to be great people and moms and dads. And I've got it's the joy that one of the joys that keeps me going is seeing the alumni and just being so successful and enjoying their lives, and it's just awesome.
Charles, you rock. Thank you so much. Folks, check out his podcast wherever you're listening to this podcast. You can find it there as well. I'm going to keep these outros brief today because my wife and I are going to go down to the waterfront before the sun sets and relax. It is a Friday and it is time to unwind. So I will thank the team who are Michael Cooper, Steve Hinchy, Mitch Mooring, Trevor Jones, and Krista Copper. Mitch makes beautiful basses in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Learn more at mitchmooring.com. I am your beaten down by the week, but still enthusiastic host, Jason Heath, and we'll see you again soon for more life on the low end of the spectrum.